Uniting America with truth, justice, and independence. This is the Norman Goldman Show.
But, Michael, you started the article with a congressman here in California, a Republican congressman here in California, who keeps talking about government has no role in giving welfare to people, and he and his family have been recipients of millions of dollars in corporate welfare, in farm subsidies, and then you go from there. Michael, for those of us who haven't read the article, give us a sense of what was in there.
The featured character, the featured member of the cast of the article was Congressman Doug LaMalfa. He's up in the Central Valley, actually in Butte County. And he's been a rice farmer. I think his family's been rice farming for generations now. And over the last, let's say 15, 17 years, the family farm has collected $5.1 million in crop subsidies for their rice. Sort of a failure in that column because I don't think I gave the full flavor of the hypocrisy of Congressman LaMalfa's position. You would have to go, if your listeners want to go on C-SPAN and they can pull up the hearing that I referred to. It was back in mid-May. They were discussing the Farm Bill, which is both farm subsidies and the food stamp program all in one. And he sat there and he quoted the Bible and talked about how he's a Christian, and we all here have Christian charity in our hearts for the poor. And then he said, but I don't see why, since food stamps have risen as a cost to the government so sharply over the last few years, why it's such a big deal to cut them back right now.
Well, that's unbelievable. I mean,
well, it's not unbelievable if you follow Congress, as we all do. But there's another aspect to this that I did I think communicate well, and that is that Congressman LaMalfa's office, when I asked them about the sort of incongruity of all this, they said, well, what you don't understand is that crop program that he got $5.1 million for is a program that he's voted to eliminate. And I thought that was sort of curious, since it was the first time I had ever heard of Congress eliminating a big program that would benefit so many of its own members. And I checked it out, and it turns out that, well, yes, both the Senate and the House versions of the Farm Bill eliminate this program, which is known as direct payments. However, what they've substituted is a different set of programs which guarantees a level of price for certain commodities, including rice, that's basically at the price they're getting now, and that price is at historically high levels. And if it falls back to historic or normal levels, let's say the levels before 2007, the cost of this program will be 4 times the cost of the direct payments that they voted to eliminate. In other words, they're pretending to cut costs by eliminating a farm subsidy. What they're really doing is they're driving up costs by substituting one that they're calling something other than a farm subsidy.
And in fact,
that's what it is.
It could be 4 times as much in terms of payments to corporate farmers, or all farmers.
Oh, well, for all farmers. And by the way, for rice, the proposed price standards are set in the House version of the bill. The variety of rice that's grown by Doug LaMalfa's family and his family farm, of which he and his wife own a third, by the way, is a special variety. It's called japonica rice. It's the rice that we see in sushi. It's very well. It comes at a premium price. The price standard, the price threshold for that rice is even higher than it is for normal rice. So he'd be in line for a lot more.
The food stamps that feed poor people are not generous. The numbers have skyrocketed since the economy went down the drain, and now Congress wants to cut even the meager food subsidies that people are getting to basically just try and feed themselves a little bit so they don't starve to death. And on top of that, the people don't realize that food stamps is itself a subsidy to farmers because it gives farmers people to sell their food to. So why are we waging war on starving people by cutting their already meager subsidies while at the same time upping the cash subsidies to farmers under a different program?
I'm going to unpack all of that for you. But first, let me just say, it's not we, and it's not even all of Congress, that's waging war on food stamp recipients. For example, another California congressman, John Garamendi, who I think we all know from his long years in service as a state government, he represents one of the neighboring districts to Doug LaMalfa, and he is also a farmer. And he voted for this change in direct payments as well. But he also made a stand in favor of an amendment that would have restored the cuts that are proposed for food stamps. And minutes after LaMalfa did his I'm a Christian, and here's what the Bible says about caring for the poor, but we shouldn't be responsible. We should do it not as government, but as individuals and through the church. Garamendi took the podium, and he said, we are responsible. In Congress, this is our job, is to protect these people. And we should not be letting people starve. It's shameful. And I think he was absolutely right. Now, in terms of the food stamp program, the House wants to cut $20 billion over 10 years. And yes, the cost of it and the enrollment in it has risen sharply since 2008. And I don't think any of us has any doubt about why that is. It's because food stamp enrollment and costs track unemployment very, very closely. It's almost the same curve, though it tracks it a year or two later. And what we expect to happen, in fact, the Congressional Budget Office says this is going to happen, is that starting next year or maybe in 2014, we're going to see those costs come pretty sharply down because the economy is improving. But they're not down yet. And when we talk about how generous are these, we've had a theme that I've suggested many times called the theme of the undeserving poor. And that is, there's a tendency in Congress or among conservatives to say, well, poor people, they're lazy, they're slobs, they don't take care of themselves. We heard Mitt Romney talk about how they don't want to take responsibility for their own lives. And there's a lot of this going on around food stamp recipients. Well, they're lazy, they're fat, they're buying the wrong things, they're buying Coca-Cola. But let's really look at the numbers. The average food stamp payment per person in this country is about $134 a month per person. And if you do the math, that works out to $1.48 per meal per person. That's what the food stamp program provides. And for people like LaMalfa to say, why can't they afford to take a little less? I think, to ask the question is to answer it.
Well, but Michael, the Democrats are also going along with this in the Senate and the House. There's a bipartisan deal. Am I wrong to cut food stamps and the amount that poor people get to feed themselves?
Well, the Senate does have a bill, and you're right, that will cut food stamps, but not nearly as much. In fact, by about 1/4 as much as the House. But yeah, I think what we're seeing here is the power of the farm lobby. They want this bill, and they're going to get their farm subsidies, and and if conservatives want to put cutbacks in food stamps on, then the farm interests are so powerful on both sides of the aisle that they're going to go along with it. And it is, as Garamendi said, and of course he's going along with it too, it's shameful.
To replace a $5 billion cash payment corporate welfare scheme with a potentially $20 billion cash payment corporate welfare scheme to quadruple the size and then call it a cut is astounding to me. And as you document in your article, this is the way politicians play the shell game and trick us. And you wonder why people hate politics and hate politicians. They do this kind of stuff.
Right. They lie.
Uniting America with truth, justice, and independence. This is the Norman Goldman Show.